everyone, and welcome to Meeple Leaf Reviews. This is Jacob.
And this is Jeffrey.
And we're here doing another video, a before and after, as it were, of Arkham Horror, the card game.
That's right.
But what's a before and after?
Before and after is where we tell you guys our expectations before we've ever played the game.
Mm-hmm.
All we've done is read the rules, and we know what's going to happen. Then we go ahead and we play the game. We come back. We give you our first impressions, not a review, just first impressions, initial thoughts of what we thought of the game.
All right, so going into this one, this is a game that you actually kind of semi-convinced me
Yes.
to buy.
Yeah.
You had mentioned it, and I had heard some good things about it.
I had heard lots of good things about it, and I was just like, man, I'm debating getting this. And Jeffrey's like, okay, I just bought it. Oh, okay.
It happens. The art in it kind of drew me in as well. Like, it's a beautifully produced and really nice looking game. It is cooperative, which is not usually my cup of tea.
Yeah, it's a strike for you already.
I know.
It's not looking good.
But I think after reading the rules and looking at it, I think I might like it.
Okay.
Because you're building a deck, but we're just going to be playing with the starter decks. But you're kind of building your character. You're drawing these cards, putting down these different assets, these different equipment, and you're trying to like power up almost before the game timer keeps ticking, and then you're just going out investigating stuff. And also there's a story element to it as well. Yeah. Which I also found interesting.
The story is probably the number one thing that I'm looking forward to in this game. Just to go off on a little tangent really quick, we recently just played Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition, and I really liked the story, the dark kind of ghoulish things that were going on. So I'm excited to see what this game has to offer with a similar taste.
Now, this game, instead of having dice rolling for like combat or skill tests, it has a chaos bag. Right. Where there's these different modifiers in there. And when you go to do a skill test, you draw one out, and that modifies your result, and then determines if you win or lose. Right. How do you feel about that?
I don't like it.
Right.
I don't like the thought process of that. When I first heard about this game and it was being described, that was the first kind of flag that went up. I was just like, ooh, I don't know if I like that. I almost wish they would have done dice that you would roll. And then they would it wouldn't be a standard die, obviously. It would be a custom die. And then they would have a different die for each difficulty because there's 5 different difficulties or so in the game. And so depending on the difficulty, you just roll that die.
I think the dice bag is interesting because you can do a lot of different things with it. Like with a die, you'd have to have like a 12-sided die to roll, and then But with the dice bag, it's much more customizable to the options that you can come out. Yeah. The one thing that I kind of did before we played is I went and did statistically. And I think doing that before you play, so if you meet a skill challenge, you're like, I have this percentage chance of beating it. If I go one above, I have this percentage chance. Right. I think you almost need to do that for the difficulty that you're doing before each scenario. So you go in having an idea of how much you need to beat something by to, what your odds are like at the different levels.
Sure. Makes sense.
But for me, whether it's the dice bag or dice rolling, I don't really care. Like, I don't see this as inferior to dice rolling because it's doing the exact same thing. If you have a 12-sided die and you need to roll one side, well, you have a 1 in 12. The same thing in this bag. If you have 12 tokens in there and you need to draw one of them, you have a 1 in 12. Yeah.
I would just prefer having one thing than a bag of 12 things.
Right.
But like you said, it's easier to manipulate that and change it by adding one extra token. Now you have something else. You couldn't do that with a die, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's more options.
So let's get it to the table. We'll come back and we'll see what we think of Arkham Horror, the card game.
Well, let's do it then.
Welcome back, everyone. We just finished Arkham Horror.
That's right.
The card game.
The card game.
So, background into our first play.
Yes.
2-player, and it took us an hour and 20 minutes.
Right. A little longer than I expected it to.
Yeah, I mean, because it's a co-op, it really just, I think, depends on the players how much talking and trying to strategize that you're doing. I didn't have to look in the book too often.
But we didn't spend too much time.
But there were still things that I had to look up.
Yes.
So, what's your overall first impression?
I really enjoyed this. There wasn't as much story as I thought there would be, but there's a lot of flavor text on all the different cards. So you could occupy yourself by reading all the different little things, and I was doing voices and stuff to try and make it creepy. Yeah. Really enjoyed that aspect. And the story that was unfolding was interesting. It wasn't like
it was
over the top and like all this crazy stuff happening with like depth.
Right.
Of story.
I think the campaign would be like a movie, whereas each scenario is like a scene.
Okay.
Like if you were to watch this scene in a movie, it would be like 5 minutes long.
Right.
So it's not like a huge overarching story, but if you did a big campaign, well then the story is going to unfold, and then also decisions that you make in the game or how well you play will also affect you later on in the campaign in some way. So I think you're just setting the groundwork for a story here, and it does have that. I think that's neat for this style of game. I felt a little bit like I was building up my character, how I mentioned before.
Okay.
However, I just didn't get. I kept discarding the cards instead of using them. Right. So that's probably my own fault why I didn't get built up a little bit better. But I can definitely see the cards that I was drawing. I was like, oh yeah, if I had this in play, I could really get some things going here. So that was really interesting.
Yeah, I didn't really look through my deck at all before we played, so I didn't know what my character was about. But as I was drawing more cards, I was just like, oh, I can combo these together. Yeah. Oh, this would be really good. That card's awesome. So I really like that aspect. I felt like I could really kind of relate to my character and get into the game.
Yeah. Then the other thing, the big thing that we mentioned in our expectations was the Chaos Bag.
Yes.
How, because you were a bit, whatever. How did you feel about the Chaos Bag?
It did not bother me at all.
No.
Though I will say that I was drawing really well out of that bag. I don't think I drew anything worse than a -1. I drew all zeros and -1s, and there was -2s, -3s, skulls, hazards, -4s. And I was just like, oh, 0, oh, another -1, oh, 0,
you had
0.
Really good pulls. I felt the same level of excitement as a dice roll. Like, there was one time where I was like, oh, do I need to use the extra thing? And you were like, oh, yeah, I could just give you one extra. I was like, okay.
I'll just do it. Why not?
And then, like, as I pulled it from the bag, I was like, like, we would have failed if we didn't do that. Yeah. So it's the same reveal type system. And there was another time where I was like, oh, I'm 3 ahead. Like, there's only, like, 2 things in the bag that's going to make us fail. And I pulled it. I was like, no!
Yeah.
So I feel it gives you the same level of excitement as rolling dice.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think the reason why they did it is it's just way more customizable rather than having a bunch of different dice with like different sides and stuff like that.
I would almost say it's even more exciting.
Yeah.
Because like rolling a die, you have your hand and you're just like, oh, what's going to happen? But here you're like riffling these tokens around. You feel it and you're just like, oh, which one of these is it that's going to like kill me?
Well, I guess there's a subtle thing to it as well, is that it puts the choice like actually in your hands. Yeah. Like you're rolling a dice and you're like, oh, it's going to roll onto whatever side.
Yeah.
But when you're reaching in, you're picking the token, even though you don't know what it is. You're picking it and you're like, oh.
Yeah, so I actually really enjoyed that bag.
Yeah.
And pulling out those tiles, which surprised me.
Yeah.
Surprised me, so good.
So this is also an LCG where they'll be coming out with more packs, which more cards for characters. There's also like leveling up at the end of a scenario, so you can level up cards, add more cards, different campaigns, I'm assuming. And then there's deck building as well. So I think I did enjoy this play. I'd like to try building a deck, maybe to get that engine or that character more focused.
Sure.
And then maybe feel even more like I have this character,
right?
And I'm doing things with it. But yeah, I mean, it was challenging. Really, it came down, like, I almost died.
Yeah, the beginning of the scenario, we were just like, oh man, this is so easy. There's like nothing happened. And then it just ramps up. And then this big boss showed up and we were just like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Like, what are we going to do? I would compare this to the Pathfinder adventure card game.
Right.
And this has like a story and more depth, I feel, than that game. Just after like one play of this and playing through the entire Pathfinder adventure card game, I can see more going on already in this.
Well, I like how the cards, you have to decide whether you're going to put them into play and use them as their like main text, but they also have different icons that can assist you in the skill checks. So there's also that tough decision of, oh, do I spend the resources to put this into play, or do I just get the one-time bonus and use it now? But then there might be, say, cards you're like, oh, I'm not going to use this, or in this scenario it's not as good. But the card is still useful. As well as those weaknesses cards. So as you're drawing cards,
those are so brutal.
You could potentially draw something that could be negative for you.
Yeah, and just like cripple you. And it just, there's so many little thematic things that happen in the game. Even just like with all the different cards. You have hand sizes. So like you're putting things in front of you, but you can only hold one thing in each hand. So if you want to throw something else out, you have to discard it. Really neat.
Yeah, so overall, I think it exceeded my expectations.
Oh, yeah.
For this game. I'm looking forward to playing it some more.
Yeah, I was a little wary. I was excited for it, but a little wary, and I'm happy to play this again. I want to do another mission.
Cool. All right. Well, don't forget to go down, hit the like button, subscribe. We love it when you do that.
We love it when you do that. You can go in the description down below, and you can go to the link that we have there, which will direct you to our website where we do podcasts for long periods of time.
And just talk about games.
Just talk about games.
All right. See you guys next time.
Take care.